You ever have one of those neighbors who thinks they own the entire neighborhood? Yeah, well, mine wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, and her name was Karen. It all started with a single dirt road, a narrow, winding path that cut right between my land and hers. That little road was everything. It was how I brought in supplies, how guests reached my cabin, how the mail truck came through. Without it, my property was practically cut off from the rest of the world. But Karen? She hated that road. She said it ruined the aesthetic of the HOA. She said my trucks made too much dust. And the final straw? She claimed it wasn't even my right of way. One morning, I woke up to the sound of engines rumbling outside. I looked out my window, and what I saw made my heart drop. There were cement trucks right on the path, and a team of workers spreading wet concrete across the entire road. I ran out in disbelief. "Hey, you can't do that! That's my access road!" I yelled. Karen stood there in her oversized sunglasses and a smug little grin. "Oh, we're just improving the neighborhood," she said. "This road doesn't belong to you anymore. It's HOA property now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was literally burying my only way in and out. I called the county. I called the sheriff. Everyone said the same thing. It's a civil matter. Days later, the concrete dried, solid and smooth. A cold gray wall cutting me off from civilization. My property, my business, my deliveries, all trapped. But here's the thing Karen didn't realize. That little road, it wasn't just any path. I had the deed and survey maps to prove it was mine. So while she celebrated her victory, I started planning something else. Something that would make her regret ever touching that road. The first thing I did after the concrete dried wasn't scream or threaten lawsuits. I went quiet. Karen mistook my silence for defeat, and that was her first real mistake. While she bragged to neighbors about taking control of the road, I was digging through files that hadn't been touched in years. Old deeds, county plats, surveyor stamps from decades ago, and there it was, clear as day. The road wasn't HOA property. It was a recorded easement, legally tied to my land since before the HOA even existed. The paperwork didn't just support me, it buried her. I took copies to the county assessor, then the planning office, then finally a local attorney who specialized in property disputes. He didn't even hesitate. She trespassed, he said. She obstructed a legal access road, and she altered land she had no authority over. That's when I filed the complaint. A week later, Karen got the letter. I know she did, because that same afternoon, she marched onto my property without permission, heels sinking into the dirt, rage written all over her face. "You went behind my back!" she snapped. I smiled. No, I went by the law. She insisted the HOA board approve the work. Turns out they hadn't. She had pushed it through on her own, claiming it was urgent. Maintenance. When the board members realized what she'd done, they started distancing themselves fast. Emails went unanswered. Meetings were suddenly postponed. Then the county inspector showed up. He measured the road. He checked the records. And right there, standing in the sun with Karen watching from her porch, he slapped a stop work violation on the concrete. She tried to argue. She raised her voice. She even said I was harassing the HOA. The inspector didn't care. "You blocked a legal access point," he said. "That's not cosmetic. That's serious." By the end of the week, Karen was receiving fines, daily fines. And every single one was addressed to her personally, not the HOA. That's when the panic started. She stopped waving at neighbors. Her lights stayed on late at night. And for the first time since this mess began, she knocked on my door, not with confidence, but with fear. "I think we can work something out," she said quietly. But she still hadn't realized one thing. The road wasn't just my access. It was also the only road serving her entire section of the HOA. And legally, I controlled it. Karen had always thrived on control. Her HOA position, her endless rules, her carefully curated sense of power. It was her identity. But suddenly, the one thing she relied on most, the road, was no longer hers to manipulate. And that's when the real chaos began. I knew from the survey and the deeds that I could legally block her access until the concrete issue was resolved. But instead of doing it immediately, I let her stew. She made phone calls, sent emails, tried to rally neighbors, even threatened lawsuits. But all the while I stayed calm, watching her panic build. Then came the day. I put up the temporary barricade, just a small private access sign and a single barricade in front of the dried concrete. Nothing aggressive, just enough to make the road impassable. Karen saw it from her porch and went ballistic. She screamed, she shouted, she stomped down the road like a storm. But legally, there was nothing she could do. The paperwork was airtight. The county had confirmed my access rights, and the HOA couldn't touch me without opening themselves up to major liability. The neighbors started noticing. At first, some were sympathetic to her. After all, she had played the concerned HOA leader for years. But seeing her trapped on her own side of the road, realizing she couldn't leave without my permission, completely changed the narrative. Whispered conversations, side glances. Even a few HOA board members approached me privately, clearly hoping to stay neutral. Then came the icing on the cake. One morning, I watched her SUV try to squeeze past the barricade and get stuck. Concrete dust on the tires, frustration written all over her face, neighbors peeking from their windows. It wasn't dangerous, but it was humiliating. By the third day, Karen was avoiding the road entirely. She started taking a longer, inconvenient route, costing her hours every day. Mail delivery was delayed. Guests couldn't reach her house. And every time she called the HOA or the county, I just smiled and referred them back to the records. Records she had tried so hard to ignore. The lesson? Power isn't about shouting or stamping your feet. It's about control backed by proof. Karen learned it the hard way. By the end of the week, she wasn't just frustrated. She was broken. Her ego bruised, her authority questioned, and the neighborhood seeing her true colors. The concrete had been her attempt to dominate. But ironically, it became the thing that exposed her completely. And while she was panicking over the road, I realized something else. I wasn't done yet. This nightmare began. Karen was already unraveling. The barricade, the county violations, and her failed attempts to manipulate the HOA had left her desperate. Every day she was confronted by the truth she had tried to bury. Power without legality is meaningless. I had been patient until now, but the final move was about to be played. The concrete she poured on my property? It wasn't just a physical blockade. It was evidence. Every inch of that dried. Gray mess told the story of her arrogance, her illegal actions, and her complete disregard for the law. I took high-resolution photos, gathered witness statements, and documented everything meticulously. Every complaint, every phone call, every email, all lined up like pieces in a courtroom puzzle. Then, the HOA meeting happened. I was invited, though invited is generous, and Karen showed up, her confidence trying to mask the panic in her eyes. The room was packed. Some neighbors were curious, others clearly wary of her temper. I calmly presented the documents. The deed proving my easement, county confirmations of my legal access, photos of the concrete blocking my road, and records showing she acted alone without board approval. I explained how her actions not only violated the law but also endangered property access for herself and potentially others. Karen tried to interrupt, to shout, to manipulate the narrative. But with every objection, I countered with irrefutable proof. There were no opinions, no exaggerations, only facts, stamped and verified. The room fell silent, and I could see the realization hitting Karen. She had overplayed her hand. The HOA board had no choice. They voted unanimously to demand she remove the concrete immediately, pay for any damages, and officially retract her unauthorized claims over the road. And if she refused, the county and legal authorities would enforce the order, fines accruing daily. It was a complete reversal. The queen of control was dethroned. The neighbors who had feared her now whispered about how the tables had turned. And I finally had my road, my access, my freedom, my peace of mind. But the real victory wasn't just the road. It was showing that one determined person, armed with truth and patience, can stand up to anyone, even the most entitled. Karen in the HOA. The concrete she poured to dominate me became her downfall. And the road, once a tool of oppression, became a symbol of justice. As I walked along the restored path that day, the weight of everything lifted. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate the power of evidence, patience, and standing your ground. Karen's concrete might have blocked the road, but it also paved the way for her defeat. If you enjoyed seeing how Karen's crazy HOA stunt backfired, hit that like button and subscribe for more wild neighborhood stories. Comment below. What would you have done if someone blocked your only road? I want to hear your story.